moms behind Pluie.
We are seeking $500,000.
Addie and Brittany walked into the tank looking for $500,000 for 5% of their self-sanitizing diaper changing table for public restrooms. Here it is. So how it works is that the top has these UVC lights, and when you shut the changing table, it sanitizes itself in 60 seconds. It also has little handles on the side to hang your diaper bag from. They sell for $2,699, and it costs them $1,312 to make. So far, they've sold about 300 units at 115 locations. Some of their bigger ones are like CVS, Topgolf, and even the DFW airport. But that all doesn't really add up to the $10 million valuation they're presenting. Then we find out, like most people this season, they've raised a shit ton of money. First, they raised $650,000 with a $4 million valuation cap on a convertible note in 2019-2020.
Is that all you've raised?
Is that it?
Then in 2021, they raised $1 million at an $8 million valuation on another convertible note. And lastly, in 2022, they raised $2 million at a just straight up $20 million valuation. If you want more info on convertible notes, go back to my Wild Wonder video because I talked about it more there.
You might as well just keep on raising.
This raises the question of, are the other investors okay with the fact that they're giving the sharks a 50% discount on the valuation? They say yes, but don't really give us any further explanation on it. Then we get into some fun numbers. First, we find out they have $1.4 million in the bank, which is better than some this season. They have $550,000 in orders waiting to be delivered and $150,000 in revenue booked for the year. But this year, they're going to lose $500,000, and last year they lost about $1 million. Time to dive into the sharks. Kevin says he doesn't care what other people were willing to pay for it. To him, they're practically pre-revenue, so he's out. Damon thinks they're both operators, but doesn't think this is a product that's going to make people want to go to certain places. He also thinks retailers are going to be trying to save money because of the pending recession, so he's out. Robert thinks it's a great product, but agrees with Damon that retailers just aren't going to be wanting to spring for this right now, and says that at a $10 million valuation, he just doesn't share the same certainty they do, so he's out.
Do you share a level of certainty at a lower valuation?
Well, how much lower?
So Mark takes us back to the whole idea of what are they missing that would lead investors to be okay with taking that 50% hit on the valuation just to get a shark. They say what they're really missing is the need to speed up their growth, but Mark doesn't see what could be holding them back.
Why aren't they ordering and installing more?
It's because they don't have to.
Like Lori says, the main issue is the consumer who wants it isn't who's having to buy it. Mark agrees it's just not all adding up for him, so he's out. Lori admires their grit as girl bosses and loves the idea and concept, but talks about how pricey it is and how she sees it in high-end and luxury places, but doesn't think the average business is going to be willing to pay for something like this. So she's out, and unfortunately, they leave the tank without making a deal. Final thoughts, I really don't have much to add that the sharks didn't already say, but I agree that the biggest problem is that the people who really want this aren't the people who have to buy them. This feels like one of those things that's just going to take a lot of work to convince place by place that they need them until enough places have them that every place thinks they need to have them, or if for some reason this becomes a safety standard. But otherwise, I just don't think it's going to happen without that. I do think it's a great idea though, just super hard for an investment. Part of me feels like if they would have come in a little later and had more proof of sales and all of that this could have gone a lot better, but let me know what y'all think in the comments and I'll see you in the next one.
There you go. Ryan is...
Ken, Monique, and Ryan walked into the tank looking for $350,000 for 5% of their inflatable camper shells, rooftop carriers, and air decks. While getting stuff together for this, I also found out that there is a fourth founder. His name is Dan, and he was at a Chiefs game while they were pitching, but they say he was there in spirit. So here are the different products. The bottom right is going to be that air deck. You can use it for a bed, a table. It's just like a sturdy surface for the back of your truck. Then on the bottom left, we have the air carrier, and then right below me is the camper shell. Moving on, I'm mostly just going to talk about the camper shell because that's 80% of their sales anyway. So the camper shells come in different sizes for different truck beds. The least expensive one I saw was $1,099, and the most expensive one I saw was $1,999. The cost to make them is around $740. Comparing all this to standard fiberglass campers, those can be around $3,500 and up. So not only does it save you space by being able to inflate and deflate, but you also can save some money. To make these products work where they inflate but then have a hard exterior surface, they're using this technology called drop stitch, which you might have seen in things like inflatable stand-up paddleboards. This leads Mark to bring up an investment he made in season 3 called Tower Paddleboards. Apparently they moved into the inflatable space at some point and ended up doing pretty well with it. I decided to go back and watch it just for funsies, and I have to show y'all this clip from it.
Mike, my company is,
Don't worry, it's only your biggest moment in your life.
Hilarious. Love it. Those were the great days of Shark Tank. Anyway, year to date, they had done $277,000 in sales and were planning to hit $600,000.
Let me riddle you this. Why is this thing worth $7 million?
Ooh.
They bring up that they have a PO for over $100,000 from a national retailer, but that's just still not adding up to the Sharks for a $7 million valuation. Damon then asks if they've raised any money, and of course they have, because it feels like everybody has this season. So far, they've raised $500,000. Do you want to know how much money they've each put in? $200. That's it. They each put in $200 when they formed their LLC to pay the California LLC tax, and that's all. Then, of course, the Sharks want to know if they're doing this full time. Ryan is the only one out of the 3 who is. Monique still has a job that she says takes 3/4 of her time. And then Ken, who is my all-time favorite out of them, is a bellman at a hotel. And I just love that for him. He seems so proud and happy about it. Unfortunately, though, the Sharks start to go out one by one. Lori says they aren't worth what they came in asking for, so she's out. Kevin thinks it's a great product, but they just have so much work ahead of them, so he's out. Mark calls it a touch-to-trust product and says that with this type of product, it's hard to get the hockey stick growth that he looks for in an investment, so he's out. Robert loves it and says he agrees with Mark that some companies are hockey stick growth, and then sometimes you just have to grind it out, and says that this is definitely a grind-it-out business, but he doesn't think they're ready to 100% commit to it, so he's out. But we still have Damon. Damon thinks it's a good product, but says that something's obviously not converting because he feels like they should have had more sales by now. But he still decides to make them an offer for $350,000 for 8% of every unit sold until he recoups his money. Then it goes down to 5% royalty for every unit sold.
Is that a royalty deal I smell?
I think so.
They're reluctant because they're worried about their cash flow, but Kevin lays out the math that it's around $144 a unit for the toppers, and without having to give up any equity, it's a pretty good deal. And Mark also agrees that the math's on this one. And all the Sharks agreed that it'd just be kind of hard for them to get an equity deal with their ridiculous valuation. They decide to do a counter for 7% as the initial royalty, with it eventually going down to the 4% after he recoups his money.
Let me think about that. No.
Literally all the Sharks chime in at some point, agreeing that Damon has made them a super fair deal, and they end up listening to them and make a deal with Damon. Final thoughts. Once again, this is a type of product I don't really have regular use with. I've used one of those toppers for storage on a vacation one time, so there's that. But overall, it does seem like a better version of what these are, especially the camper bed thing for the trucks. I'm all for saving money and for saving space. So, and I do agree with the Sharks that the $7 million valuation was just a little silly. I would really love if someone could explain to me why they picked that, but let me know what y'all think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.
And here's the thing, it's not just for dogs, it's for any pet. You see the cat right there that looks pretty sad.
RC walked into the tank looking for $100,000 for 10% of his pet rescue app. Here's some of the screenshots of what the app looks like, and here's how it works. You make a preset timer, and then it uses a geolocation to start the timer whenever you leave your house and stop it when you get back home. If the timer expires before you get back to your house, it triggers a system of responses. The first is they reach out to you. If you don't respond, they reach out to your emergency contact list. Then, if they still can't confirm your pet is safe, they initiate a wellness check. You're probably asking, what do they mean by a wellness check? I'll tell you. They mean they are actually going to call the police to do a welfare check on your house. We're going to put a pin in that and come back to it in a bit.
Archie, let me get this right. Have you sold any of this to anybody?
They've been in business 3 months and have 317 downloads and 102 subscribers. It costs $2.99 a month or $29.99 a year. He says he spent about $2,400 on marketing, and his costs to run the app are about less than $100 a month.
Because you have no employees, it's just you.
But that's
At one point, he says he doesn't think he's going to start to need employees until they reach about 5,000 subscribers, and it gives us this great moment from Kevin.
You can't have your cell phone blowing up and you're saying, what, you're dead, you're in a car accident, you're stuck in Atlanta. Like, you can't do that yourself.
So back to how this whole thing works. Robert is having a hard time wrapping his mind around all this and has to clarify twice that it's not an employee of Woof or someone in the Woof network who comes to your house to check on your dogs and take care of them if your emergency contact or you don't answer. It's the actual real life police.
Trying to get a hold of
break
you.
into your house, get the dog.
Yeah.
Then Mark asks the next logical question, what do the police do with the dogs? Because they're obviously not a doggy daycare. His answer to that is that they'll call animal welfare, who will hold the dogs until you or a family member can get to them. If this all just sounds ridiculous and far-fetched, it's because it is. I think my favorite part about the whole thing is they haven't even gotten to fully test it out yet, because they've only had 4 instances of support that was needed, and in none of those cases did it get to the point where they had to do the welfare check. So he's just hoping that's how it'll go and that it'll all work out. Time for what the sharks think. Damon's biggest thing is about the name. He thinks it's so generic that he's going to end up losing the rights to it, and it'll knock down all of this branding work he's done. So he's out. Robert doesn't see this thing working because he's catering to a really small amount of people who don't have one single person they could just contact to help them out. So he's out. Lori uses her code for when she doesn't actually like something, aka she just doesn't see it as the right investment for her. So she's out. Kevin says he kind of warmed up to the idea at some point, but not enough to invest. So he's out. And lastly, Mark thinks it's a great product and he is alone in that, but he also just can't see it becoming an app with 1 million or more subscribers, and that's what it's going to really need to be an investable app. So Mark's out. So obviously he leaves without a deal, and instead of showing the product again like I usually do for final thoughts, we're just going to look at my beautiful baby laying in the sun, because I think we all deserve it after listening to this. Or I do, because it frustrated me personally. Final thoughts. This truly might end up being the worst product of the season. I guess I'll start with the only positive I could think of, which is I think this is well-intentioned, but it just doesn't make any sense. It's not well thought out, and I'm just dumbfounded, to say the very least. I don't know what world this guy lives in. It must be like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where he thinks the police are just gonna, let me take your dog, and it'll all be fine. It honestly just makes me so angry thinking about. I spent a little time trying to think about how this maybe could work. What I came up with in the end was maybe trying to sell this to a company like WAG. I guess you could have that third step either be your personal WAG walker, or if they can't come, maybe somebody in the WAG company comes and checks on your dog and does all that. But that's all I could think of to make this thing work in any aspect. I truly and deeply never want to talk about this thing again unless something super scandalous wild happens. And I really want to know y'all's thoughts. Do you think this is as bad of a product as I do? Do you completely disagree with me? Let me know what y'all think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.
And then I moved to Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Go Mavs.
Ahima and Michael walk into the tank looking for $250,000 for 5% of their frozen Greek yogurt business. Here are some of the different flavors, and overall, it's just supposed to be a healthy alternative to regular frozen yogurt. Regular frozen yogurt is super low in fat, but extremely high in sugar. These are supposed to be lower in sugar, and it's also got functional nutrients like protein, probiotics, fiber, and immune-boosting superfoods. They sell between $4.97 and $6.95. The cost to make them is $2.25, and they have a goal to get that under $2.20. Ahimba wanted to find a healthier dessert for herself because when she was around 22, she got diagnosed with a uterine fibroid, and she hoped that eating better would help change her overall health. She started by making it in her kitchen, and eventually she went to Penn State to perfect the recipe, and voila! Sweetkiwi. She was actually born in Nigeria and raised between Nigeria and the UK, and then she moved to Mark's favorite place, Dallas, Texas. At first, they were going to open up stores in Dallas, but then while they were at a wedding in Nigeria, she decided she wanted to start her business there and grew it to one of the largest frozen yogurt companies in Africa. But that business is completely separate from the American Sweetkiwi. It is not involved in this deal at all. But it does have a lifetime revenue of $2 million.
In Nigeria?
Yes.
Correct.
Retail stores?
Brick and mortar stores.
Wow.
They were already interested in doing this business in America, and then they got approached by places like Whole Foods, and now they're in Whole Foods, Walmart's, Kroger's, with about 1,700 stores. And year to date, they're at $650,000 and on track to do anywhere from 1.2 to 1.4 million. And they are break even on cash flow, which is not something we can say for so many of the businesses this season. On to the Sharks. Kevin says the space is super crowded and he's really impressed with them for being able to get into Kroger. But he says he has to make a deal based off the risk he sees and offers $250,000 for 20%. And of course, they want to hear more offers than that. Damon thinks they're extremely impressive, but it'd be his first time investing in a product like this. And with the valuation, it's just too much of a risk. He says he loves the product, but he has to be out.
Guys, you got an offer on the table. You got an offer on the table.
We're also getting a lot of press coverage. We're featured
I know,
last year
but
by CNN.
like in I'm rooting for you. You have an offer on the table.
Back in season 11, Lori invested in a frozen dessert called Frozen Farmer, and this is just too competitive with that, so she has to go out.
She wants to kick your ass.
Mark says he wants to understand what they're doing to get this out there marketing-wise, and they say what works best for them is going out and doing demos. Mark doesn't really like this answer, and he doesn't really think it's enough, and doesn't see the path for how they're gonna blow this up. So he goes out.
I don't know for certain
let's
what's going to
take stock,
happen.
Robert.
I don't know what's going to happen for certain tomorrow either.
Yeah, but
know?
at least you have a marketing plan for your products.
Well,
Then they start trying to convince Mark to come back in, which does not sit well with Mr. Wonderful.
All right, I'm out. Out, gone. I don't know what you're doing. You say you're an entrepreneur. You focus on the money. They're all out. There's only one guy left. I made an offer when there was all these sharks.
Robert is still
Mr. Wonderful's
in.
pissed, okay? I'm out.
Mr.
Robert's
Wonderful.
still in.
I
I
understand
don't
you're
care.
pissed.
I don't care. I'm out. You got Robert. Go for it.
Robert says business is about making money, not about emotion, and calls Kevin's outburst theatrics.
It's my money,
theatrics.
and I'll cry if I want
yeah,
to.
you can.
And cry you are.
You know,
Then Mark gives this long, passionate speech about how everything is uncertain. He talks about them starting the business in Nigeria and how his dad came over on a boat. He says what he looks for in people is who can land on their feet and adapt. He then talks about how he doesn't have an investment in this space, but loves it and has always wanted to learn more about it and find the right people to partner with and do that in this space. And he thinks they are the two best people he could put his money into. So he says he'll pick up Kevin's offer where he left it and offer them $250,000 for 20%.
and why not us?
Can I make a counter offer?
Come on, after that great speech, man.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you.
They make a very specific counter of 7.1% equity and 5% advisory shares for $250,000. So that's 12.1 total. Robert says he'll split the difference with them at 16%, and they end up making a deal. Final thoughts, I'm about 70% sure there is a store near me that has this, and I plan to obtain it as soon as possible and report back to y'all. The shark said it looked delicious, and I gotta know. I don't really think there's much to write home about all this. It just seems like a good standard business that's not losing money. And honestly, with everything we've seen this season, I'll take it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.